you're likely the reason why you're not getting promoted. You are likely standing in your own way from where you want to go next. This episode of Her Mentor podcast is going to tell you exactly how you are probably the main thing standing in between yourself and your next role or your promotion that you're looking to get so desperately. And I'm going to share my story in hopes that some of you won't make the same mistakes that I did and that you can truly get out of your own way. So, this episode of Her Mentor podcast is probably going to be a little bit shorter than usual, a little bit different than usual because it is a solo episode with no guests this week. Still have lots of great guests lined up, but thought that this episode fit really well with some conversations that I've been having recently. And who is this really for? This week's episode is going to talk a lot about the transition from SDR to AE. But if you are an SDR or in any entry level role, I think that this advice is going to be really useful regardless of what kind of role you're trying to get into. So my career in sales happened, like many people, completely on accident. I took an SDR role not even knowing really that it was a sales role. For some reason, I thought it was going to be like a research role of some type, with a path to being in marketing. Part of that was on me for not doing much research, but also this company was a bit odd with how they structured the role and how they use job titles internally. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Landed the role, ended up in it, and it was a role underneath an SDR, which is like transparently kind of wild that that even exists. SDR is already such an entry level role. So to be a level beneath that was kind of shocking. And then to see and start to learn a little bit more about how the industry worked, I was like, whoa, my job is normally an intern's job. I have a bachelor of public relations. I have I have 1 year of work experience in public relations where I was being trusted to do things I never would have dreamed of being trusted to do. And now I am essentially human Zoom info. So it was a bit of a crush to the gut kind of moment of like, oh my gosh, like I really don't know what I'm doing. And it's going to take me forever to get into a role where I can like make money and have control over my income. If I'm going to be in a sales role, I want to be able to have control over my income. But I didn't feel like that was the case in this situation. The role was really uniquely structured where I only got my commission, which was pretty low transparently. I only got my commission if an SDR booked a meeting that was qualified with a lead that I found. So it was like if they just didn't use my leads, what was I supposed to do? And like it felt very out of my control to hit my quota at that time. And I guess in that role, my confidence definitely took quite the plummet. It was supposed to be 3 to 4 months in the role, ended up eventually getting promoted to SDR, but with COVID, that of course stretched out timeline wise. That is a very long winded way of saying that my first role was not what I expected and it got my confidence down. Then I got promoted to SDR, started doing well in that after not doing well, all of those things. But once again, in that role, never really had a ton of clear direction of where I wanted to go next and what I wanted to do with my career. I think there was part of me that was interested in moving to managing that team because I already knew I was really good at SDR work. I already felt confident in that role. I was the kind of person who at lunch, I wouldn't, go to a workout class or go grab food with somebody that I work with. I would normally sit there and listen to a webinar or listen to a podcast or something educational about the role so that I could be better in the role, so that I could make more money in the role, so that then eventually I might be good enough to get another role. So that's a little bit of background of who I was in that role, and naturally thought management on that team would be the next step. I didn't even really consider AE as a path at that point because I didn't think I was qualified enough, which is kind of silly because if we're thinking about this, I'm like a year and a half to 2 years into sales at this point. So definitely have enough qualifications, in my opinion, to be putting yourself out there to be an AE. But for some reason, I didn't even think that was an option. Some of that, like I loved the people that I worked with, but there's so many horror stories out there of AEs not treating SDRs as like, I don't know, an equal human being sometimes, of just talking down to them or telling them how they should do their role. So I think there was a lot of things that were happening that were just like getting in my own head about why I couldn't do that and why I might need to pursue this management path. So I started going down this management path of what would that look like? What kind of skills do I need? Okay, I don't have any experience managing teams. Maybe I'm not good enough for this. Still applied to that role, made it really deep into the interview process, was actually done the interview process and just waiting for word back on if I got the job or not, and got job offers from 2 other companies and decided on the spot to quit that company that I was currently at and interviewing. And I walked away for a few reasons. I think one, my gut was telling me I need to walk away from this company. It has served the purpose in my life that it was supposed to serve, which I think is something really important that people need to realize, is that there is a time and a place for every single role that you'll have, but there is something beautiful about cutting off something before it turns sour or before you start to feel undervalued or whatever it might be. Like, recognizing, you know what, I think that this has served its purpose in my life. So there was that half of me. And then there was a little part of me too. And maybe this is stuff that was planted in by other people during that time frame. I'm not going to get into it right now, but overall, it was a complex situation with a lot of voices around me. And there was something that was also saying, maybe you're not ready for this. Maybe you're not good enough for this. Like I mentioned this before on another episode, but this was around the same time someone had asked me, in the interview process, like, how old are you? And I just was like thrown off by that. But then it was followed up with, I knew nothing at your age either. So all of these things are getting in my head. And I'm not saying all of this of like it's other people's fault. I'm saying it of I was letting all of these external things into my head and take over my mindset and thought process around where I wanted my career to go. I was letting other people make decisions for me or tell me what I was and wasn't able to do around things that I was actively doing. Like for this management role, for example, I was already standing up in team meetings and telling people, this is some research I've done. These are things I'm testing out. Here's this stuff that I've prepared. Like I was already doing some of the work that was required. I was already involved in things. I was already pitching ideas to leadership. I was already doing a lot of the management stuff. So to then have someone to allow myself essentially to have somebody else's thoughts get in my head and me own that as like, no, I'm not good enough for this while I was actively doing it. Just kind of silly. Anyway, I ended up in another SDR role at another company. As much as I sometimes look back and I'm like, what would my life be like if I took that management role? I am so glad that I went to this next company because this next company opened up my eyes to so many other options, opportunities, all of the things. So this company was fully remote, went into an SDR role, moved into an enterprise SDR role, which was really fun because I had been selling to enterprises in my last SDR role, but it wasn't very strategic. It was kind of just happening. Like it was a lot of luck, I think, that it was working out, and a lot of like working with AEs who already had really established relationships with some enterprises versus this new company. It was building out whole new skills. So stayed in that SDR role for a while. And then the same thing started happening in my head of like, I've been an SDR for a while, again at another company. Like, I need to get out of this before I become that person that's stuck as a lifetime SDR. And that's a whole other conversation for another day. I do want to talk about, like, is it okay to be a lifetime SDR? All of that someday, not today, but that's on my radar of something to talk about because I have some thoughts. So I stayed in the SDR role for a while. Those thoughts are coming up of like, what's next? What's next? What do I do? Having conversations. Once again, feeling like, the things that I might be interested in doing are getting a little bit shot down. And I don't think it was intentional. I think that it's just other people, when you ask their opinion, they're going to give it to you. So if you're not in a place that you can take on other people's opinions, Kelly, maybe don't go asking a bunch of questions. Anyway, I eventually went through just a lot of stuff happening there. Not bad stuff necessarily, just like a lot of changes in who's on the team because people were coming and going. We had layoffs. I got laid off. I got rehired. All of these things are happening. And I was just like, you know what? I've been an SDR for so long at this point. I'm just gonna do it. Like, there's an AE role available on the team right now. They're hiring internally only. Why the hell wouldn't I apply? I've been on the team the longest at this point. I have the most experience. Um, why wouldn't I just apply? And it was probably the worst time to apply for a promotion. Like, I had just been laid off and just got rehired. So maybe not the best time to look for a promotion, but I did it. Um, Long story short, I didn't get the role that time around. Another girl did who just she was on the inbound team. I was on the outbound team. She had way more experience talking on the phone. So that was probably a huge reason why she's also just really good at her job as well. So saying that of like no hard feelings, but I think that I still kind of crushed it during my interview process, which feels so vain to say, but this is what I learned from that experience was I got such good feedback about where I could be working on things, what was really good, what was really strong. And the main takeaway from me is that the AE manager at the time said that he would 100% trust me to be an account executive on his team like starting that day. He would feel totally cool with me taking calls and doing the job. And for me, that was such a like, wait, really moment? Because for some reason I thought, okay, even if I land an AE role at this point, like I might not be good enough. I'm going to have to work so hard. I'm going to have to catch up to these other people. Like just like this confidence gap still existed for me. So, all of that's to say, didn't get it that time, got promoted to AE when we got acquired by another company, worked as an account executive at that bigger company, and then have moved on to different roles and now run my own business. So, all of that, I was so long winded with some parts, and now we're just wrapping it up so quickly. But went through a lot of different points in my career where in my heart, in my gut, all of that was telling me, like, you're ready for a promotion. Like, what's next? This is not challenging enough for you anymore. But then would let my own brain get in the way and be like, wait, but you aren't good enough. You don't have experience closing deals yet. So you can't be an AE. Um, there's no way to get that experience of closing deals until you are an AE, is what I should have been thinking. So now that you have an idea of what my experience and my career path has looked like so far, I want to share some advice that I wish I would have had. And it's just like 5 bullet points. Like literally, I have them here on a piece of paper. We will go through them quickly. I promise this will be a shorter episode than ever, probably. So, number one, I want you, if you're an SDR, or even if you've been an SDR for a year, if you've been an SDR for a week, if you haven't even landed your first SDR role yet, if you are in an entry level role that you know you can only stay in for your own like personal growth, if you're in an entry level role that you know that you can only stay in for a set period of time for your own like mental growth essentially, like SDR role, we will talk about it, is great for some people and I think it can be a great long-term career. But if you're somebody who wants to always be building new skills and trying new things and being pushed in different ways, like if you're in a role like that and you know there's going to be an end of when you need out of it, sit down and get super clear on your intentions. What do you actually want to be? It doesn't have to be an AE. It doesn't have to be an SDR manager. It doesn't even have to be in sales, but get super clear about what you want and this is like your little private moment to work through all of this. So be super honest with yourself. Like, don't be worried that, oh, but I'm not as smart as it. No, don't have any of those thoughts. Oh, this person would get promoted before. No, stop it with all of that. Just sit down and be super honest with yourself about where you want to go. Because if you don't have any clear direction, similar to me in the first couple of years of my career, if you don't have that clear direction, you are never going to be able to get where you want to go because you're not being intentional about how you're getting there. If you are a week into your SDR role and you're like, wait, Kelly, I seriously don't know, like, being a solutions engineer looks super cool. Being a CSM looks super cool. I could also see myself being an AE. Like, that's a little bit different, I would say. Like, explore all those avenues. Maybe list those out as I'm cool with going any of these routes, and then build from there and get narrower as time goes on. But if you were like me and almost 3 years into an SDR role and you're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do next, let's figure it out, because I think that that will be really helpful for you. And also with that, don't put pressure on yourself that if you say that you want to be an AE, that you have to be an AE. You can always like land a CSM role and then be like, I actually would rather be an AE, or land an AE role and be like, I'd rather be in solutions. It's your life. You can make decisions and then change your mind. Next piece. Once you have a clear direction of what you want to do, and maybe this isn't like week one in your SDR role. Maybe this is when you're having those more career focused conversations and professional development conversations with your manager. Lay out this with your leadership team. Say, hey, I want to talk to you about, the next step in my career. I know that I still have XYZ skills to work on, or whatever it might be that you think is like the reasonable thing to be in between you in that role. Maybe you only have a certain amount of time in the role. Maybe you've only been an SDR there for 3 years and they require people to be there for 9 months before they're eligible for promotions. Maybe you need to hit quota consistently for a certain amount, whatever it might be. Lay out like, hey, I know that I have to hit this, but I want you to know that my intention is to try and get promoted to be XYZ at this company. I'm curious if this is something that you would be able to help with me on. Like, this is where I think I might need some support. This is where it's important to set your intentions, because this will open up the doors for, one, you have somebody that is automatically a support in your journey. If it's a good manager, they'll probably continuously hold you accountable. Like, oh, how are all of your mock calls that you're doing on your own working out? Or, hey, I know that you really want to be an AE. Notice that you're behind on quota this month. Like, that's super important. We know there's going to be an AE role available soon, whatever it might be. They're going to be a built-in support system for you. Also, a built-in advocate when the time comes. Next really great opportunity here is by telling people where you want to go, there will be more learning opportunities for you. So also share this intention with, for example, the account executive that you're paired with. If they know, oh, they want to be an AE someday, this is a call that probably isn't going to go anywhere. It's not one of our target accounts or anything. Maybe I'll get my SDR to take this intro call with me there for support. Oh, this was super helpful when I was looking to move from SDR to AE. I'm going to share these resources with my SDR because she told me she wants to be an AE. So just by sharing your intentions, you are already going to open up other opportunities to get support and learning opportunities with that. The next thing that will open up is you're also going to be more likely to be on leadership's mind when opportunities are starting to become available, which is important, honestly. Like, if somebody knows, oh, Kelly's always wanted to be an AE, we have an AE role coming up, you think she'll apply? Like, I think that does say something about you and your likelihood of being considered for roles. If the first time that someone ever hears that you're interested in like moving to marketing is when you guys randomly have a marketing role available, people might be a little bit like, does she want it or does she just want out? I'm not saying that's right or wrong either way. I honestly have some thoughts on that because I was the quiet person that was just like, I don't want to be needy and da da da. Share your intentions though, because I think it will help. So number 3, start building skills on your own. It is super important that you are taking ownership of this process. Yes, number 2, we laid out your intentions with other people. We think that there might be some opportunities that arise from that, but you need to take ownership of building those skills on your own. So maybe that looks like, connecting with another SDR who wants to be an AE and doing mock calls with them every other week. Maybe it's something like that. And this is something too that you your fellow SDRs, yes, they're like competition when you're getting promoted because maybe there's only going to be one opening. Yes, they're competition on the leaderboard, but they also are your greatest allies. Like, there's enough room for everyone to succeed in life. There's no reason to not share with other SDRs how you're working on things, what you're doing, and collaborate together. I think that that is a really powerful thing to be doing in your career, is to be working with the people that are sometimes pitted against each other. So just wanted to throw that out there, like find other people to do this with. Maybe it is something that your account executive has the capacity to do like a few minutes of mock call during your one-to-ones or whatever your cadences look like for meetings. Um, Also, just like be honest and ask people for resources too. If there is an enablement team, be like, would it be cool if I saw what the AE enablement stuff looks like? Like, I'm just curious. I don't know what your team structure looks like. I don't know what's a reasonable ask in your company, but I guess what I'm saying is like ask questions if people seem like they might be down to help. But also make sure that you're really owning this growth and make sure that it is something where you aren't putting a bunch of work on somebody else's plate so that someday you can get promoted. That is just the main thing that I would say is like you really need to take ownership of this. And also, there's so much that you can do on your own without bothering anyone else. So, going into Gong and listening to sales calls is great. Take it one step further and do it as a mock call. So, sit down, listen to a Gong call, start through, but every time that the prospect speaks to the AE, so AE asks a question, prospect speaks, after the prospect is done speaking, hit pause and think of how you would answer, and then play, see what the AE did, kind of like compare mentally in your mind, like, how would I have handled that? Okay, that's different. This is how they did it. Think through things like that. And as you go through them as well, something that might be interesting to try doing is following deals all the way through, looking at what kinds of follow-up emails they're sending versus like what you think would make sense to send. And this is really just a good way to start flexing the muscles without having to ask for a bunch of support. Plus, it's something that you can do on your own time when it makes sense for you. Maybe if you really want to be promoted to an AE, maybe it is something that you're passionate about and you're going to spend an hour every Sunday evening just doing some Gong call stuff and looking at that. Maybe it's something you can build into your work week where you're doing, over the course of the week, 3 hours of like AE stuff to get prepped for any potential roles that pop up. So build your skills on your own. Have that support system, yes, but own building your own skills. Number 4, you need to tackle your inner monologue. This is the main thing I think is getting in the way for pretty much anyone who gets a promotion, especially women though. So I don't have the stats off the top of my head, and I'm not going to look them up if we're going to be real. But women are less likely to apply to roles if they don't meet 100% of the criteria. Don't let that inner monologue of like, hey, I'm not ready for this, I'm not good enough, don't let that stop you from getting where you want to go. If you're listening to a podcast like this, these are some assumptions that I'm making based off of the type of people who listen, but you're already someone really focused on career development. So you're probably listening to more than just this podcast. You're probably going out and listening to webinars, looking for ways to learn, asking the right questions, doing all of the right things. And you're probably already in a position where you probably would crush it in your next role. So that's who you are already. Don't let your inner monologue of, hey, I'm not good enough. Hey, I'm not able to do this. Take control. Note it. Say, hey, I hear you. You think I'm not ready, but I am because X, Y, and Z. Or like, hey, yeah, of course I don't meet all the criteria yet. I've never done this job before, but I didn't ever do this job that I'm currently in before taking this role. And look at me, I'm crushing it. I'm able to learn things quickly. With the right support, I can do anything. Like, just start acknowledging how you're talking to yourself and don't let that get in the way between what you want and where you are. So that is much easier said than done. There's so many resources in the world to help with that. I do recommend going and listening to the episode right before this. I think it's episode 5 of her mentor podcast featuring Jessica O'Kane. She is someone that I worked with in my past. She was my manager at one point in time. And then I worked with her in the form of her being my coach. Super helpful tips around mindset and how to switch out of this, like, am I good enough? To like, no, I am worthy of this. I'm not entitled to this promotion, but I'm worthy of it. I know I could do it. Um, that would be really helpful. There's so many other resources out there though. And I don't know what would be best for you. I just recommend the thing that I've been doing most recently that's helpful is, and this is from someone that I follow on TikTok, Eli Rallo. She does these question boxes, and I asked her a question in it once. And I was just like, I feel like I have imposter syndrome sometimes. And this wasn't the first time that I had been reminded of this, but it's just such good advice. Like, especially for women who struggle with this stuff. Like, if you're somebody who doesn't have a big inner critic in your mind, which I wish I was you. If you're somebody who doesn't struggle with this, maybe this won't resonate. But if you're somebody like me who your mind is constantly at times being like, you actually suck, you can't do this. Her advice was just be super delusional. Like, change your inner monologue to be super delusional. And I still have those negative thoughts pop up. But instead of letting them carry on, I'm like, okay, dumb, bye, like, get out of here. And then I switch it to a super delusional thought of like, why would I be insecure about that? I already know that I can do that. Or like, I'm already the best at that. And I know that that might sound a little bit jarring for some people to be like, oh, be super delusional and like be like, I'm perfect and I'm the best in your head. If I don't speak to myself like that in my head, I have zero confidence. So it's what works best for me. Find what works best for you. My last piece of advice is just like ease up the pressure on yourself. It is overwhelming to feel like you're stuck in an SDR role. And that might look different for different people. Like, maybe it's you were made the promise of like, oh yeah, we promote everybody within 6 months to 1 year to be an AE. And you're in the role and it's now 9 months and you're like, when's my turn ever going to come? Or maybe you've been an SDR for a long time like me. I was an SDR for almost 4 years. Like, that's kind of crazy. If you feel stuck, that is a real feeling that can happen. Just like try and ease up the pressure on yourself. It is going to happen. You are someone who is driven and wants to move forward in their career. Ease up the pressure on yourself. Do not feel like I need to be doing this stuff all the time. Like, I didn't listen to 3 hours worth of phone calls this week. I'm screwed. Da, da, da. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Do not. Because what's going to happen if you continue to put so much pressure on yourself is that you are going to, one, the negative spiral is going to happen. So number 4, the tackling your inner monologue, that work is going to go just by. And you're also going to put yourself in a position where you're more likely to burn out. And then if you're on the brink of burnout and you even get that promotion, let's say that you get the promotion when you're about to burn out already, you're probably not going to be able to succeed in that role if we're being real. So ease up the pressure on yourself. You're going to get promoted eventually. I know that you will. Um, we we all will eventually. We're all on our own path. We're all on our own timeline. So those are my pieces of advice. Number 1, get clear on your intentions. Number 2, share, lead with your intention, share that intention with other people. 3, build the skills that you need while you can in your current role. So find opportunities, own your own growth. 4, tackle your inner monologue if it's super negative like mine was. And number 5, just ease the pressure on yourself. So those are my tips for getting promoted to AE. In your current role, if there's anything else that you can be doing to be a top performer, try to do that too. Master your current role as best as you can. We'll leave it there though. This week was a little bit different, a little bit shorter than usual, I hope. And next week we'll be back with another guest that I'm excited about. I'm always excited about every guest, but I'm excited about this one too. If there is anything that people are looking for in terms of topics in particular, always happy to have a topic like this covered. This truly came up from conversations that I'm having with SDRs right now. So if there is anything else that you're interested in hearing my take on or getting advice from one of our guests on, please let me know. But as always, really appreciate you being here and joining us this week. And we will be here same time next week. But if you are someone like myself who doesn't want to have to remember to come find us, or maybe is, I don't know, just aware that sometimes I post at slightly different times. Sometimes I post on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday, folks. Sometimes I post on Thursday at the crack of dawn. Sometimes it's Thursday afternoons. If you just don't want to have to think about when it's going to go live and you just want to be notified, you can follow us on Spotify. So that is all. Thank you all so much for joining us this week. I will see you next week. Bye.